Okay, everyone, welcome to lesson 5, the Kabbalah of meaning or strength and serenity, the Kabbalah of calm confidence. And before we do that, we'd like to plug two upcoming events. Event number 1 is for the ladies. This Tuesday, Rosh Chodesh Society, second in a series of 7, their monthly meetup, and they'll do candle making, and it's just getting ready in the mood of Hanukkah. And so that's Tuesday, December 9th at 6 p.m. That's for the ladies. And then everyone can join us at the annual public menorah lighting with entertainment and latkes and donuts. And that's Sunday, December 14th at 4 p.m. And that's at the Plainview Shopping Center. So that's fun. There's already over 100 people reserved to that event, and the numbers are coming in. So book before. We're capping it at 600. So if you're after 600, you got to find latkes and donuts somewhere else. Okay. Now we're up to lesson 5. Lesson 5 can be found in the book on page
125.
125. Okay. So we have to make a little of a review, a little bit of review of where we've been coming to from the last few lessons. So we started off in lesson 1 that we want to find peace and inner serenity. We have to be a mensch. We have to be a human. That means we have to be like trees. What does that mean to be in alignment? That means we have to be growing, we have to be productive, we have to have relationships, all these things. All the way back in lesson 1, we explored what it means to live. If we just seek pleasure and avoid pain, it's not a life. There's no meaning in that. It's empty. We have to fill our life with meaning, being productive, always growing, yeah, etc., etc. But then we took a shift in lesson 2, and we said even that is not really so anchoring because the meaning is all subjective. And I could decide today this is meaningful, and then the next day something else is meaningful. And we feel like we're going nowhere. We have like our day is empty, and then we just fill it up with things. And then we say, really, it's not that I exist and then I have to fill up my life with meaning. It's the opposite. The meaning exists first. And when the meaning exists first, we call it purpose, right? There's a purpose. There's a purpose why we were created. We're in this world for a reason, and now we have to fulfill that. In lesson 3, we focused on the Torah's revelation of the underlying purpose. What's our purpose? We're here to be in a dark, crazy world and uncover the light and make this world a home for Hashem by doing his mitzvahs and by being kind to each other and by be, becoming better people ourselves and all the different elements that we explored in lesson 3. In lesson 4, we took that up a notch and we said, not only is there purpose in my life in general, but each moment has a special energy that I can tap into that fills my life with a specific purpose that's going with that time of energy. So the time of Rosh Hashanah and Hanukkah and Passover, and then each day has a special moment. So who here had an opportunity to look up their birthday, their Hebrew birthday? You did it, Jillian? Good.
It's
Do you want to?
tomorrow.
It's tomorrow, your Hebrew birthday? That's beautiful. Happy birthday. Yud Dalet Kislev, the 14th of Kislev, which my boys, they tomorrow when they go to yeshiva, they're going in their white shirts. Why? Because it's the date of the wedding of the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin. Rabbi Menachem Mendel and Chaim Mushka Schneer said it's their wedding date, and so like they do like a mock wedding in school. So Jillian, you have a wonderful birthday in a wonderful month. Yud Dalet 14 means like a hand. So there's many layers of meaning to that. So that's wonderful. Happy birthday. And not just that, in Hebrew, the birthday starts the night before. So it's already your birthday. So Yom Holedet Sameach, Yom Holedet Sameach, Yom Holedet Sameach. Happy birthday to you. And as we said last week, when it's someone's birthday, they have a special energy to bless other people. So if you can take a moment to give us a blessing, please. Yeah.
Sure. I bless everyone in the class. Have a wonderful, beautiful evening and an even better week.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, and Mazel Tov, and you should have a wonderful year ahead with only good things. Okay. So those are all about how to get into the driver's seat of life. If we get in the driver's seat, we have to realize that the car is going somewhere. There we have directions. We have directions and we have to follow the GPS and then we're good to go. And then we spoke about living in the moment, that it's not just about following the directions, because, you know, a good parable for this is when you're driving a car. So the rear view mirror is very small, and the GPS is also very small. What's the largest? Is your windshield. You want to have all your eyes looking at what's in front of you, right? So the GPS is like your purpose, like my mission. But then the windshield is like looking at the calendar, like what is the time that's going on right now? That has to be a big part of our vision of what is the energy right now? What is demanded me in this moment beyond my big purpose and what can I capture here? But sometimes we don't have the steering wheel to life. And that's what this lesson's all about. This lesson is all about finding meaning in the unchosen. What happens when things happen to us out of our control? And the truth is, most of our life is really out of our control. We didn't choose our parents. We didn't choose which country we'd be born in. We didn't choose so many parts of our lives that is really out of our hands. And then sometimes there's bumps in the road. And that's what this lesson is all about. How to find our purpose and our anchoring and serenity and confidence to to navigate the curveballs that life throws at us. Okay, so let's start with a little exercise. I think there's a printing mistake in the exercise itself, so I'm changing the questions and then ignore what it says in the book. So the first activity on page 127 is to cite three examples of things that you plan to do that you were able to do in the last week. So three things that you did in the last 3 weeks that you planned out. And in the second list, three things that were unplanned. You didn't intend for them to happen, and they just happen. It could be neutral things, it could be happy things, it could be annoyances, or maybe even more than that. Anyone want to share? So let's go start with the first list. What are things you plan to do this week that you were able to do?
um, to go to the Career Center
Go to the
and
cruise.
to speak to the person that was going
Mhm.
to talk to me.
Did you find that meaningful?
Oh,
Okay, perfect. Okay, someone want to share a bump in the road that they hit this week, a snag, something, a hiccup in the matrix. Anyone want to share? Yeah, you could share. What's the hiccup?
my friend and I cared for feral cats,
Mhm.
and one of them was very special to us. And then, my friend called me and she said, someone just ran over.
Oh my goodness. The cats that Audrey takes care of, feral cats. Her friend just notified her that one of the cats were run over. That's tragic. That's awful. Okay. So, maybe this course will provide maybe this lesson will provide some comfort. Maybe. It's a tall order. It's a tall order. But let's see where this lesson takes us. The bumps in the road. Okay. So, for many of us, s- mhm. So that's what this lesson's all about. Can I find meaning or purpose? Like sometimes we feel like something wasn't meant to happen. It wasn't meant to happen, right? Everything was going good. Something that wasn't meant to happen happens. How do we navigate that? So if you live in a universe where you say everything's random and nothing makes, there's no plan or reason, you say, okay, there's nothing that's not meant to happen because nothing is meant to happen either. Everything is random. The good things are random and the bad things are random. So nothing has any meaning. And that's it. But what is the Jewish belief? Can we believe that everything is random?
No.
Right? No, no, certainly not. Let's take a look to a foundational text from Maimonides. Maimonides made an organized list of 13 principles, foundational principles that are the foundation of Jewish belief. For example, if a Jew believes, if a Jew believes that the moon is made out of cheese, is he still is he still Jewish? Or in other words, could he still be a believing Jew? You say, yeah, it might be mistaken, but you could be stupid, but you're still Jewish and you're not missing any foundational principle if you believe that the moon is made out of cheese. Right? It's fine. But Maimonides said there's 13 items. These 13 items, if you're lacking if you don't believe in one of these things, then you're not believing Judaism. You just, foundation is missing. And famously, this is codified in a prayer that many Jews say after the morning service called Yigdal, a beautiful prayer. It's not in the Chabad Siddur, but it doesn't mean Chabad doesn't believe in these 13 principles. We certainly do. And we'll read from one of his 13 principles. And these are declarations of faith. So even though it's written in the first person, I believe, it's everyone who's reciting it is saying they believe. So it wasn't like Maimonides is saying, I happen to believe this and this thing. He's writing it. This is a declaration to say. So let's read text 1 on page 128. Stan, you'll read for us page 128.
God's God's script. I believe with complete faith that the Creator, blessed be his name, is the creator and guide of all created beings. He alone made, makes, and will make all things.
Okay, so he alone made, makes, and will make all things. So at its basic level, God is boss. God is creator. You know, he calls the shots. Nobody else calls the shots. So if something happened, he's the CEO, he's held responsible. Something that happened in the universe, we call up God is the CEO, he's in charge. That's the basic level. Nothing happens in this world without God's know-how. So God knows of everything. Everything that's going on in this world, even the bumps in the road. God's perfectly aware. So what does that tell us? That tells us that actually God is the script writer. He is writing the script of the universe. Um, he's not just created the world, but as Maimonides says, he alone made, makes, and will make all things. Okay? Let's dial this down a step further. Because this is a foundational principle that changes the worldview of many people.
We're on page 128.
128. So this is a foundational way of seeing the world, whether we believe that God is a script writer in our lives or we believe that the world is random. And you'd say, okay, either you have the faith gene or you don't. Some people are believers and some people are skeptics. So, what am I to do if I was born a skeptic? It's not my fault. Why do I have to have this? Why do I have to have this inner turmoil? Why can't I be like those people that have simple faith that God is the script writer? Why can't I be like that? So in this amazing book by Lisa Miller called The Awakening Brain, The New Science of Spirituality, she writes an amazing thing. She says she went off to study the field of mental health, and she wasn't looking for this discovery, but she ended up finding, let's read her first, and then maybe I'll expand on it. So maybe Maddie, if you can read for us, text 2, page 129.
Spiritual wiring. Each of us is endowed with a natural capacity to perceive a greater reality and consciously connect to the life force that moves in, through, and around us. Whether or not we participate in a spiritual practice or adhere to a faith tradition, whether or not we identify as religious or spiritual, our brain has a natural inclination toward and docking station for spiritual awareness. An awakened brain is available to all of us right here in our neural circuitry, but we have to choose to engage it. It's a muscle we can learn to strengthen or let atrophy.
Okay. So she's arguing that everyone is born with a spiritual gene. Every human being in their brain, there's a part of the brain that's primed to find meaning in the world, to find the script writer, and not to just say everything's random. So even someone who says, I struggle with faith. Okay, you don't have to go to the store to buy a faith muscle. You have it already in. You just have to exercise it a little bit, So it's much easier if you have a muscle that just has to be strengthened versus you have to find, travel to far distances to find that faith muscle. So it's within all of us that ability to be believers, and especially in the Jewish tradition, we have a saying, "We're maminim b'nei maminim." We're believers, the sons of believers. And even, as the classic joke goes, that a Jewish family sent their children to the local Catholic private school because they took them out of public school, they put them in the Catholic school, and the kid comes home and he starts speaking about the Trinity and the God and the ghost and this and that, and the dad says, "Listen here, son, there's only one God that we don't believe in." Right? So, like, Jews have this very unique relationship. Like many Jews are atheists, but deep down, which God do they not believe in? It's the one God, right? That means the muscle's there. Even an atheist Jew. It's like, when it comes to Jews in the army, it says, McConnor, they're handing out the dog tags. Connor, what religion are you? Catholic. Smith, oh, Protestant. Davidson, well, I'm not sure. Depends what you mean. The way Jews have a very complicated relationship with Hashem. Even on Yom Kippur, you'll ask them in shul, why are you in shul? Very stuttering. They're not sure what they believe and why. But there's this muscle that's there. This faith muscle is there by every Jew. And Elie Wiesel records that there was a Jew in the camps that a Nazi said, "I want you to kiss my cross," and the Jew refused. "No, I won't." He says, "You better." He says, "No, I won't." And so he shot him on the spot. And the son was in the camps, was crying. He says, "My father didn't believe in God his whole life."
Wow.
Right?
So it didn't even have anything to do. Wow.
But obviously he did believe. In other words, there's just a muscle that's there that's only activated, in extreme situations when it's, when your life is on the line. Do you or don't you? Every Jew is a believer, the son of believer. So it's there. And so we naturally believe that God is a scriptwriter. But it's not a convenient truth to believe because it creates a lot of obligations and responsibilities. So it's not a convenient truth to have, but our muscle is primed to say God is actively involved in our lives. So, but there's a deeper level to this. It's not just that everything is according to plan, but there's a deep meaning of why it is according to plan. Let's take a look at something we say in our prayers, the daily prayers before the Shema, text 3. Gail, I see you're still unmuted, so might as well. We could benefit.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Continually renewing. In his goodness, God renews each day continually the act of creation, as it is said, "Give thanks to he who makes great luminaries, for his kindness is eternal."
Okay, so the language here is not that God made the sun, the great luminaries. God is making. In other words, the sun exists in the sky, not because God created it on the fourth day of creation. No, God is recreating the sky, the sun at every moment. And if God stops to create the sun would cease to exist. So it's not just God created the world years ago with a plan in mind, and now the plan is just running on autopilot. God is actively recreating the world at every moment. So this is a deeper belief. Let's take a look at a famous Kabbalist from the 1500s, the Rabbi Shaya Levi Horowitz, text 4. Let's get someone in person. Audrey, out loud as possible.
The common understanding of how the heavenly forces operate is this: God blessed the Creator, brought everything into being from absolute nothingness, and therefore has the power to do whatever he wills, even to override or suspend the natural order. At the outset, he assigned spiritual forces to govern the world, each one appointed over its own realm. The world continues to function according to these systems, as if his hand has stepped back, except on such occasions when he chooses to intervene and override them. Until then, these forces operate through the power he originally placed within them at the time of creation. But in truth, as it seems to me, our faith teaches otherwise. God, in his goodness, is constantly and deliberately renewing the act of creation every single day. His influence is ongoing and intentional. If, for even a moment, he were to withdraw this flow, everything would immediately dissolve into nothingness. All of existence would simply cease.
Okay, so on the screen we have the classical version of how most people think, even believing people. People that believe God created the world. What's the natural assumption? God created the world, but he's the ultimate boss. And if things are gonna go awry, he could step in and intervene and make miracles, change things up, right? But he set a world according to nature, and he comes in to do a miracle every once in a while to remind everyone, hey, I created the world. Don't forget about me. That's like a classical interpretation of how even people that believe in creation believe the story. But the Shalah says that's not the real truth. The real truth is every moment is a miracle. The fact that we're here this moment wasn't going to happen. God had to actively choose, I want this moment to happen, or else it wouldn't happen. The difference between miracles and nature are that are miracles that happen on repeat. So to us, it seems like, oh, of course the sun will rise tomorrow. What's the question? It rose yesterday, it rose the day before. No, but the truth is, it was a miracle yesterday, and it's a miracle today, and it'll be a miracle tomorrow when the sun rises. The only difference between miracles and nature is that it becomes like, that's when it's something not on repeat. It's a miracle that doesn't happen automatically. The fact that our heart is pumping in and out, nature. No. God is saying, heart, expand, heart, detract. God is literally ordering our hearts to pump and collapse. Every single thing that's happening in our lives, the Shalah is saying, is a constant creation. It's happening at every moment. Now, you could say, okay, cool, nice. Is this logical? Like, why do I have to assume that this is how God made the world? In other words, how do I know that? Now, obviously, we had it in the prayers and the text, and it seems to be a long-standing tradition. But we're going to try to go a layer deeper. Like, what is the premise? What is the logic? Like, why did God do it in this way? Couldn't God be more efficient and just set it on run. You know, we all have all our appliances now. You could set a timer and set things, let it run. So why couldn't God create the world in that way? Why did God, have to keep himself so busy with every moment? God is occupied with creating the world. It's a full-time job. God doesn't have any better things to do besides for creating every detail of the world. So the logic is to try to a deeper understanding of, this is something that's our mind is very physical and thinks in physical terms. And we have a very hard time relating to non-existence because our brain doesn't know what non-existence looks like. In our mind, something and nothing are related because something is something and nothing is another thing just called nothing. The mind is very hard time of really living with the concept of nothing. And our world was created it's something from nothing. But in our mind, it's like, okay, our universe existed and it came from another reality that pre-existed it called nothingness. Our mind doesn't realize that nothingness means non-existence. It's the opposite of existence. It's like it was once, I don't know how it goes, but there's some expression of like someone asked, oh, where did the world come from? Like, how does the world stand? So the child said, oh, there's this giant turtle that's holding up the world. He says, well, who's holding up that turtle? Well, there's another turtle underneath the turtle that's holding up the turtle. He's like, and who's holding up that turtle? He's like, Rabbi, it's turtles all the way down, like, because it's just very hard to wrap our heads that there was at one point nothing. Not a something that's called nothing. Really, nothing. It's very hard for the mind to wrap our hands around it. But let's try to imagine, what that looks like. Imagine we're in the room and suddenly you see a ball crash through the glass and fly through the room and crash through the other glass. And then it disappears out of sight. Okay? So I'm sitting with them, let's say my Hebrew school students, and I'm asking them, wow, wasn't that cool to see a ball that can fly? It has flying powers. The ball has flying powers. What would they tell me? No, the ball doesn't have any flying powers. Someone hit the ball with a bat, created energy, but if you would follow the ball on the other side, the ball probably fell at some point because the ball doesn't have any flying energy of its own. Someone has to put that energy into the ball, and then it carries until the ball collapses. The same thing is with our world. Our world, its natural state is non-existence. That's its natural state. The fact that we see it for a few moments existing, for a few thousand years, the fact that we see it existing, that's not its natural state. Some force has to be forcing it into existence because its natural state of the universe is non-existence, is non-reality. So there's some force that has to isify it, made up word, but like has to isify it into existence. Before you weren't, now you are. There's some energy that has to isify it into existence, and that is this godly energy. As soon as God stops isifying the world returns to its natural state of nothingness. Okay? So that is the logic. That is the under the hood wiring of why God is creating the world at every moment, because he's creating something out of nothing. So he has to reanimate so it doesn't revert back to its original state of nothingness.
Doesn't it also have to do with Hashem wants us to have faith in him?
Sure, of course.
I mean,
we're going to go.
So he keeps re-energizing all these things that we take for granted, and they're all in Hashem's hand.
Absolutely. We're going to develop this much further in this lesson. We're going to take that concept all the ways to an extreme. Okay? We're going to take this concept, we're going to bring it to an extreme. Okay? So one of the ways to think about that is the difference between a painting and a projection. What happens when you make a painting and you hang it up on your wall? If someone closes the lights and then turns on the lights, will the painting disappear?
No.
No. Just because you close the lights doesn't mean the painting disappears. Because the painting came from somewhere. There was already paint before, there was already ink, there's already thing. However, when you have a projector and it's what happens when you pull out the plug?
Nothing.
It all disappears. Why doesn't it stay on the wall? Because it doesn't have any natural thing. So all creators in this world, that's the human brain thinks of when we think of creation, we're thinking how like a craftsman creates something. The craftsman is taking a wood and turning it into a chair. But before the chair existed, the wood already existed. The wood just changed shapes into a chair. So just because the craftsman doesn't have to constantly be cheerifying the wood because it was wood and it's still wood. He doesn't have to cheerify the wood at every moment. But when you take a nothing and you turn it into a something, then if you walk away, it's going to revert back to nothingness. There's the scientists turn to God and they're like, God, you did a good job running the world till now, but we think we can handle it from here. So God says, really? You could do everything? Yeah, absolutely. You could make mankind? For sure. He says, go ahead. So they start gathering their supplies. God says, no, no, no. Go get your own dust. Go get your own. Don't use my dust and my supplies. Go make your own. That's the hardest leap for for scientists for them to take what is and turn it into something else. That's a big achievement, but it's on a totally different scale than the achievement of taking something from nothing. It's a totally different, and there's a fancy term for this called ex nihilo. Ex nihilo is like something from nothing. Creation ex nihilo. That's a fancy term for this. Okay, so let's read it in the words of the Tanya. Okay? Text 5. Genya, read first text 5. Page 132.
Okay. 131.
Okay. Could be.
Oh, that right, the Hebrew. Okay. So the title is Holding It Together. This idea offers a clear response to those who deny divine providence and the miracles of the Torah. Their mistake lies in a false comparison. They imagine that God's creation of the heavens and the earth is like human craftsmanship. Just as a craftsperson might make a vessel and then walk away with the vessel remaining intact without the artisan's ongoing involvement, they issue the same is true of the world, that once created, it runs on its own. But they fail to see a critical difference. When humans create something, they're not creating from nothing. They just reshape existing material, like turning a piece of silver into a utensil. But God created the world out of absolute nothingness. That's a that's a far greater wonder, even more astounding than the splitting of the sea. Take that miracle as an example. God used a strong east wind to split the sea, and the water stood like a wall. But if the wind had stopped for even a moment, the waters would have immediately returned to their natural state and flowed back down, and they would not have continued standing as a wall on their own. So, how much more so with creation itself, which is something from nothing? That's beyond nature and an even greater miracle than the splitting of the sea. If God were to stop sustaining the world for even a moment, God forbid, it would vanish into nothingness. The world continues to exist only because his creative energy is constantly present within it, giving it life every second. It's beautiful.
So this idea that God is not just approving the script, God is actively writing the script, and he's puppeteering it at every moment. And so that tells us that everything has a purpose. Everything. And there's probably some of you already thinking of like the big questions. And we devoted other JLI lessons, a few JLI lessons to the big questions of why do bad things happen in the world? So we discuss this in many different angles, and we in the future we'll do other, you need at least 90 minutes to go down that hole rabbit hole. So that whole topic has like its own name. It's called theodicy. The book of Job is written to directly address that question, but it doesn't stop our belief that God is writing every single detail of the story that happens in this world, every single moment. Go ahead, Kenya.
Okay, so that said, so we created the vessel, and then we could walk away because God created the vessel. So he continues to keep it in existence. So can't you say that about a human? God created the human, and so the human, even though we're co-creators, the human is not, I'm not saying on its own, but the human is making its own decisions and co-creating as we are created by God and we're part of God, but can't we say the same thing?
That's the question. Can we say that? Is it fair to say that humans, where do human choices begin? Right? What part of the script is God writing, and which part of the script are we writing? And that's also a topic for another lesson. But in short, we really don't get to write the script on our life. We really only get to choose our reaction. How will we react every moment? That's where our real choices are.
So,
And it doesn't. So even the outcome of our choices is really in God's hand. In other words, let's say I say I choose to not. I choose to give tzedakah. Okay, that's a choice you have. Your response to a crisis is you're going to give tzedakah. Doesn't mean you'll be able to give the tzedakah. It might be Hashem has a different plan, so Hashem writes the script differently. The only place where we really have full treat, but I'm giving you a Hasidic answer. There are other where the spectrum is of where is our choice ends and God's script writing begins. There's a spectrum of beliefs in where this is. The Hasidic approach is all the ways at the extreme of we really only have choice over our reaction. That's the only real choices we have, and that is the real free choice, as the Talmud says, "Hakol bidei shemayim, chutz mi'yirah shemayim." Everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven. That's our only options we have. So that's Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Akiva tells us, "Hakol tzafoy." Everything is foreseen. That means the whole script is already written. Varashus nesuna. And yet Hashem gave us free choice. Where that free choice is, there's a spectrum of beliefs within Judaism of where that spectrum is.
right. And yeah.
Go ahead, Genya.
So, okay, so I'm on that page and I love the Hasidic interpretations of things. So is this fair to say that I feel, and I've seen this, and whatever Hashem decides, I am like, that's Hashem's way of saying this is the way it should be because it's for the good, and I trust Hashem. But I'm wondering, like, because I really believe that we're co-creators and it's constant, is it right to say that if I put the effort, like if I do my work as a co-creator, then that's fair to say I am living my purpose because I am co-creating. Or is it just whatever it
That is the appropriate response. The wrong response would be to say Hashem wrote the script, so let me just sit on my sit down on the couch and just watch it happen, and nothing I do matters because the script was written.
Okay,
That
right,
would be the wrong conclusion from all this.
right,
That the
right,
correct and healthy is anything that happened to me in the past was meant to be. What
yeah,
I should do right now in this moment,
yeah,
how I'm going to respond, that is in my hands
yeah,
to choose how to
yeah,
respond. Then,
yes,
as the next moment is written and whatever happened to your response plays out, then we say, okay, that was meant to happen. So, and then you move
of
on to the next.
course.
So
Of
at
course,
every
but
moment, one of the ways I don't know why I like this imagery, but for me, I find this imagery is like imagine you were playing a game of scenarios. Someone presented you with a scenario. Yeah, you walk into your house and your wife's dinner is all over the floor, and the kids are jumping on the table, and you're exhausted and tired. How do you react? Okay. And then next card. You're a billionaire and you have a million, trillions of dollars to give away to charity. What do you do with the money? Next card. And each card is a different scenario. Well, life is really a bunch of those cards happening in rapid succession, one after the other. And at every moment, it's like, I didn't design the scenario. Hashem designed the scenario. For example, last week I failed at something. I didn't live up to my standards. Whatever standard some value I held, and I betrayed my standards. Well, at this moment, Hashem planted that scenario into the cards right now with you. Here you are, Rabbi Shalom. This is what happened to you last week. This is what you know, what the information you know right now. How are you going to respond? And so, you know, it's just a bunch of things. And at every moment, you could always say, how can I show up to this moment with this scenario? Hashem decided to put that failure, even though it was my failure, but Hashem put it into my history. That means that even that failure was part of the plan.
absolutely.
My current plan that's supposed to happen right now.
That Hashem is constantly testing us to see how we are going to co-create with his hand.
Absolutely. That is what we're getting to. That Hashem.
So that's the blessing we say in the morning,
Hashem
right?
is testing us, but the word in Hebrew, the word for test is nisayon, which is also the same word for a nes, which means a banner, which means a scorecard. Hashem is showing you how strong you are. If you're not challenged, you don't know the power of your neshama. But every moment, Hashem is showing you have more power than you even know,
Right.
which leads to the other meaning of nes, which means a miracle.
Right.
Every
That's
time that
beautiful.
you co-create, that is your miracle that you're bringing to this moment. That is the whole
Beautiful.
life. That is, in summary, what every moment of life is about. You coming aware of the power of your soul by stepping up to the moment that Hashem put before you in this moment.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is where our choice is. Sometimes we choose to go to sleep. I don't mean physically sleep, but like tune out, not pay attention, not make choices, just react to, pain and pleasure and, follow that route. And that's also part of the scenario that Hashem put before us. Hashem's like, I'm going to create this person with limited awareness, limited consciousness, exhausted. Let's see his neshama come out in this moment. And then at every moment, every time Hashem puts you in a situation, it's really Hashem saying, I believe in you. You can do this. You say, really? Under such trying, with the education that I received, I barely knew I got a bad education. The parents I had, the country I live in, the work God says, your neshama is even stronger than all that. So that's when Hashem creates a scenario, he's not just creating a scenario if he knows we're going to fail. He really says, you have a power within you, a soul, that could stand up to this moment with all the baggage that I created in this scenario in this moment, because it's a constant creation at every moment. This is this is a fundamental belief.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Danny.
So I get the idea of God creating the physical universe every single isn't there, at least in the Torah, specifically the Tanakh and prophets, multiple times where it states that, Hashem literally, or I think the language turns back in, and I think maybe it's Rashi.
Oh, so even in the Torah, there's this constant language of God was asleep during the miracle of Purim, and God woke up. But then it says God doesn't sleep nor slumber. The general idea is No, the way I understand it is that God um is kind of meeting us where we are. If we're not showing up to choices we have to make, if we're asleep at the wheel, so so God's saying, I will make it feel like I'm not interested in you. The same way you're making it feel like you're not interested in me. Even though I gave you a soul and your soul is deeply interested in me, but your soul is sleeping. So that's how I'll mirror that in reverse, that also it will feel to you like I'm completely disinterested and I don't care. But it's like almost lahavdil, how my kid at home says, oh, if whoever's not cleaning up is not going to get this prize. Oh, I don't care about it. You know that they really do care, but they're showing that like, oh, I don't really care. And in the same way, that's kind of language of Hashem is like saying, oh, you don't care, so I don't care. But you really do care. And so do I do really care. And my life is on the line. But I want you to show that you care before I show you how much that I do care, even though on the deepest level, every Jewish soul always cares, and God also always cares at every moment.
So he's not doing I created this physical world, and I'm gonna chill and not and not be behind every single.
Right.
I'll say
That's the typical way, the common way of understanding. If we didn't have the Shalah and all this teaching, that's not really the depth of the Jewish belief. The depth of the Jewish belief is that God is continually creating at every moment, that He's actively involved in a very deep way. And even in that's one of the reasons we read the Megillah story on Purim. When we read the Megillah story on Purim, why do we read the Megillah Purim? Why do we read the Megillah on Purim? The Purim story doesn't have God's name mentioned once, right? So what does it seem? God is not here. When you read the whole Megillah, you're like, okay, of course God was here. Because look what happened. You thought it was random that the king made a party and that he killed his first wife and then he needed a new queen and it happened to be a Jewish girl and it happened, a bunch of random events. But once you read into the whole narrative, the whole story, you're like, oh, obviously Hashem was running it the whole time. So that's the name of the word Megillah, comes from the word Megala, to reveal. It's called Megillah Esther. Esther comes from the word Aster, to conceal. Megillah Esther, the story of the Megillah is uncovering us to this thing like, oh, it looks random. Life's events look random. There's no event. And then when you read it in the Purim story, you're like, okay. Things are happening for a reason. It seems like God is disinterested and the Jews are about to disappear into oblivion and God forgot about them. But really, even before the decree came, even before Haman's decree, God was already setting things in motion for their salvation. The salvation kind of even happened before the decree of annihilation even happened. It was all really set in motion. That's just one of the amazing things of the Purim story. Okay, so God is creating the world moment by moment. Thus, everything has a purpose.
You're in your seat as the story begins. You notice the way he stands, his accent, his jacket. You notice the gun on his belt, a symbol of bravado. But you didn't think he'd use it. Well, you should have, at least according to a rule known as Chekhov's
Sorry about that.
gun. Anton Chekhov, the 19th century Russian playwright, taught that in a well-written story, every detail must serve the plot. If in the first act you hang a pistol on the wall, it should be fired in the next. Otherwise, don't put it there. In a masterful story, nothing is extra. Every prop has a purpose, every line carries weight. Nothing is random. Is there a storyteller more masterful than the creator of the universe? Is there any story more layered than the one you're living? One of Judaism's oldest mystical texts, Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, describes God as a divine scribe, writing reality into being. We're not just characters in the story. We are the story. And just like a screen goes black when the projector stops, our world depends on God's light every moment. Creation isn't a one-time event. It's continuous, intentional, ongoing. If God stops writing, we stop being. And in His story, in your life and in every event, every detail matters. Every scene, every object, every moment, every choice. If it's here, it has a role. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. Sure, things can look totally random, even horribly random at times. But the author gave us tools to seek the meaning, to live with purpose, even when the plot twists.
Now that's, go ahead, Dr. Joe.
Well, what about every story has major characters, minor characters, they come in and out, some are by chance. Does that mean they all have a purpose, or just somebody who I pass by on the street, that's for a purpose?
That is such a great question because it is the perfect segue into the next part of the lesson. This question is powerful. So everything we learned till now just tells us that everything God does has a plan. But is every detail a major part of the plan? Or maybe there's a big general plot and then there's supporting characters. Not every detail is as valuable and important to the plot. It could have happened this way, it could have happened that way. God has a bunch of different choices and He chose this way. But the fact that it happened this way is not so significant because God could have also done it a different way. And, so the meaning is only in the big plot lines of our life, the big stories, but the little details about whether the person behind the cash register was male or female, was in a good mood, in a bad mood, whether, went for the paper bag or the other bag first, so that those details are not really so important to the story. And you could argue that that's the case, even with saying that God is creating the world at every moment. But that's not the position of Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov. Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov said, not only is God orchestrating everything, but it's pratis. It's hashkacha pratis. It's every single detail. Let's read it in text 6. Okay? Text 6. I'll read it out loud. The Baal Shem Tov explains that even a piece of straw or a torn leaf rolling in the street is subject to divine judgment. There is a decree for exactly how many times it should turn over, where it should roll, and which places it should end up. That's how extreme. Because God said, for Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, he's saying, listen, God is infinite. What does that mean? He's also infinitely caring about every single detail. And the fact that He put it there, that means that detail is important to the plot. And not only is that detail important to the plot, it might be multifunctional. That means it might be serving 20 purposes at once. For this person, it's serving one purpose. For somebody else, it's serving a different purpose. The fact that the leaf twirled in the wind 4 times or 7 times or 20 times is exactly by design. Even those little details. Every detail exists for creation, exists for a reason. One time, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov his students were saying, come on, everything? He says, look at that leaf. He turned to his students. And I'm not really sure exactly how this goes, but there's a song. Remember last week we heard a Yiddish song from Yom Tov Erlach? So he was a writer in the 1920s. So he has another song, a beautiful song where they ask the leaf, why did you blow in the wind? Why did you blow? He says, ask the branch. He said, branch, why did you shake off the leaf? He says, ask the wind. Wind, why did you shake off the lids? Ask the angel. Angel, why did you cause the wind to blow? Ask God. God, why did you cause the angel to tell the wind to blow the leaf from the branch and to twirl onto the floor? And God says, because there was a worm that was crawling and the sun was baking it and it was too hot. And the insect was baking in the sun and cried out to God, help me. And so they lifted up the leaf and they saw that the leaf was protecting the little insect from the heat. So that's like the degree. Even these little details are very significant. No detail is outside the script. So, Joel, that's exactly your question. Is any detail outside of the script? You can say so, but it doesn't really take when we say that God is infinite, that means he's infinitely involved in every single detail and infinitely caring. And it's not like, wow, God, how do you multitask? It's like God is infinitely present in each detail. Each detail is significant. Okay?
So he's infinitely powerful, infinitely present, doing every single thing at the atomic level in our universe. It's very small.
He's what?
It's a very small effort. He's infinitely powerful.
Right. Certainly. Yeah.
It's
We say that one of the meditations in the prayers is the morning prayer starts off with the second section is a section called Psuki de Zimra, where we say how God is creating the world and how amazing it is, and he's involved in every detail. And then we read about the angels' description of God. It's like God is holy, holy. That means he's removed from all, even the whole creation of the world is just, it's like us, a word that we spoke once. That's how much space it takes up to God's infinity. He's infinitely involved, but there's much more to Hashem than just the world. So it's just like that's an overwhelming thought, and that leads us into the Shema. It's like a whole process, a whole meditation when you get from, wow, God is involved in every detail of the universe. And even that, it's like a child thinks that, mom is there to serve him breakfast and then discovers, oh, mom has other interests and has other life. No, it can't be. That's our way is like, God created the world. Wow. And it's like, oh, and it's actually even the whole universe, the vast universe. And then the more we study, the more vast the universe becomes and the more insane the world becomes. But God is way beyond that. Okay. So not only did God craft the global event, he scripted every local consequence. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
God creates a script. Does he create a script when you're born, when you're placed on this earth? Or does he create the script as you're growing up, as you're dealing with everything that you're dealing with? Or, like I said,
the reason why it's so hard to answer that is because God lives within time and space, but God also lives above time and space. So in the way the future already happened to Hashem, right? Because God lives above past, present, and future. So in a way, you say, is he coming up with ideas on the spot? Well, that only exists within time. When you live outside of time, so the past and the present and future are kind of all wrapped up into one. And so that's why like when a person does teshuvah, he has the power to kind of like rewire past events. Like, oh, that thing that at that point in time looked like a bad thing, it actually was a catalyst for something good. So now that thing in the past creates new meaning. This is a very deep concept. That's very hard to
think about that. Sten's metaphor of script.
Right.
Script exists outside of time because you can go to Act 1, Act 3,
exactly,
flip back and forth. You can change things, and the whole script is there, but it exists outside of the timeline that's within it.
Exactly. We did a whole lesson dedicated to this question in a course called What Is. It was like 5 years ago. I don't know if you remember it, Sophie, from 5 years ago. Of course you do. Okay, so in that they had the textbook had little pictures on the corner of the book, and you flip through the textbook, and it made like a little movie. But as a way to illustrate, you could open the book to different pages and see, the character development was that idea. Okay, so every detail, no matter how circumstantial, is with intention. So let's do an example of the different mindsets, the shifts in mindsets. If we look on page 134, this is very powerful. So you're sitting in the airport and the screen flashes, flight delayed 3 hours. Okay. Now, if you're not using your faith muscle, right? What's your reaction? Ah, oh man, frustrated. Your inner system is going into fight or flight. Either I'm going to scream at some worker, at the desk, or I'll just sunk into depression, sadness, right? This is a common response. But because we have our faith muscles, we're not going to do that reaction. Instead, we're going to look at the moment and we're going to become aware. But there's 3 levels of awareness. Let's look at the basic level. And we'll see the progress that we've made, different levels of depth. So the basic level is there must be a reason, because God is a script writer. This is not random. God is writing the script. So the fact that the plane is delayed, okay, take a deep breath. This is from Hashem. Maybe there's someone who's running late, who absolutely must make this flight for reasons of geopolitical importance. This delay will allow them to make this flight. I'll try to be patient. Hashem runs the world and is also watching to make sure I'll be fine. So this is like one level of like, okay, I'm not the central character, but in life, but Hashem has a plan. Okay, breathe. I'll survive this. Maybe someone who won't survive this needed the plane to be late and is a connecting flight and needs this flight. So he's the most important character, but I understand there's a reason, there's a purpose for everything. So that's already reassuring on one level. But let's go a step deeper that we learned called Hashkacha Pratis. There must be a reason that is meant for me. The delay must also be meaningful for me. Maybe it's protecting me from something. Maybe something was going to go wrong with the weather if it were to have departed on time. Maybe the meeting I was supposed to attend and that I will now miss would not have been beneficial for me. Or maybe he's just giving me time to finally finish that book I started reading in 2009. Okay, but now we take it to Joel's question. Okay, it may be that's a general, but what about the details? So now let's look at the even more advanced way of doing this. In addition to all the previous truths about the reason for the delay, there's a reason I'm meant to be here now at this exact gate, at this exact hour. Maybe I'll end up talking to the woman sitting next to me, and she's someone I'm meant to meet. Maybe I'll learn something from watching the way someone handles their stress. Maybe the book I'm about to read during this delay will spark an idea that changes how I think. Yeah. So you see how the unchosen becomes purposeful and meaningful? Yeah. So it's not, whoops, it wasn't meant to happen. It was meant to happen. You didn't plan it, but the scriptwriter planned it. It was meant to happen, and every detail was meant to happen that way. We're not going to take the time to read the other scenarios, but do that for yourself. Read the scenarios, and you could see the shift in anchoring in these crazy times. So let's do this to ourselves. Let's do this as an exercise on page 136. Okay, is to think of a scenario, a hypothetical scenario of something that wasn't meant to happen. Okay, should we do this as a group together, or should everyone come up with their own example? Okay, go ahead, Sophie.
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
It's an incredible story. It has to do with 9/11. That's one too.
Okay.
Okay. My brother lives in Borough Park. Okay. There was a bus that took people downtown to where 9/11 was. When they got in the bus, everybody got in the bus to go to work. The bus driver couldn't use the bus because it didn't start. So everybody got off the bus and they said, should we take the train to go in? It's late already,
Wow. Wow. A
And
whole bus.
my brother told me the story because a lot of the people that he knew worked at MetLife, including my brother.
Wow.
And I think that is an incredible story.
Oh, without a doubt, because I worked across the street from 9/11.
Really?
And but this is, I mean, I have my own story, but another one, like my boss's nephew worked in Manhattan, like in one of those buildings, and that day they told him, you know what, Sajid, this day we want you to come today to the Jersey office. I know somebody also that they
Wow.
never get a cup of coffee. That day they decided, you know what, I'm gonna get a cup of coffee today, and the delay in getting the cup of coffee prevented them from going up to work.
Wow.
I have a lot of stories like that.
Now, we're probably, as we're thinking of the positive stories, we're thinking about, so the negative stories. So why did God put them, these people in the building? And why, we don't know the answers. And it's actually a mitzvah to challenge God and to say, God, how can you do this? But ultimately, we conclude that we don't know everything. If we knew everything, we'd be God himself. We'd be God if we knew. And all our Jewish leaders, Moses, Abraham, God, how can you do this? And then they continue to have faith. It's like, okay, it's a mystery, and the mystery is hard to fathom. But they'd never stopped them from their belief that this is part of a good plan that Hashem has. Sometimes the plot twist is unimaginable. It's hard to imagine, but we always imagine. Just to share my own story, when it came to buying the home that I purchased, I think I shared this in the past. We were looking for a home for a long time, and we had to find a home that's within walking distance of the shul and within our price range. And we had a very hard time finding. And finally, we found one, and they accepted our offer, and we put together the deposit and signed the contract. And then they didn't sign the contract. And so I called up, I called up my broker. Why aren't they signing it? Oh, I spoke to the sales agent, and the sales agent said she spoke to the lawyer, and it's the day before Thanksgiving weekend, and just don't worry about it. It's a done deal, but the lawyer's overworked, and he's gonna take care of it after the weekend. I said, no, we have to close it now before someone could take it away. Monday, I get the call from my broker. I don't know how to say this. Everyone promised me it was a done deal, but someone offered a cash offer, and you lost the house. Okay? You lost the house, and just you can think about the feeling of we spent months and months looking, and now this falls apart. And it was there was the initial reaction was, are we ever going to find the house? Maybe this is not meant to be, But then what do you remember? Of course, it's meant to be. It's meant to be. And not just meant to be, the fact that you had that conversation with your buyer's agent and she spoke to the seller's agent and they promised you that it was a done deal. And then they broke apart. All the details are really meant to be. And then sometimes it's the end of the story. You don't get to see the ending. But we got to see the ending. About a month later, my agent calls me up, the buyer's agent representing us. He says, okay, that seller's agent felt so bad that she gave me her word that it's a done deal and it fell apart. She's listing a house. She arranged that you guys could see it before it goes on the market. It's going on the market on Thursday. You could see it this Sunday.
Wow.
Oh, nice. Okay. So I got to see it, and it's within walking distance. It's a bigger home. Much bigger home with a tenant, a lot of benefits, but it was like way higher than what we could afford. And it's not like they were asking a high price. The price they were asking for was a fair price, and probably if they put it on the market, people would bid it even higher. So I told my agent, listen, you have to offer what we could afford, which is this amount. This is what we're approved. This is even that we couldn't afford, but at least what we're approved for, at least what we. And she's like, I can't make such a lowball offer? It's so disrespectful and demeaning. I said, yeah, Ellen, you owe this to us. You know, you owe this to us to put in the offer after everything we've been through. She's like, okay. She put in the offer and they accepted it before it even went on the market.
Wow.
And so it was only because
You lost
it was
out.
on, we went on that house and we put in an offer and their sales agent, that's like every detail. So sometimes we get to see the happy ending. Sometimes, you know, it's playing over multiple lifetimes and multiple things, and we don't always get to see the beautiful connections. So let's take this a step. Now, what is our mission in every moment? Let's say we're in the airport, we're stuck in the airport, or what is our mission? So we know it's either one of these three options. When we're in a moment where we didn't choose, we didn't plan. It seems like life is going on off course. We heard of a child got a certain medical diagnosis, and we thought we were going to be a rabbi, and then instead we're in the hospital every other week, or whatever other derailments that happen to life. What do we remember? This is not a change of plan. This is a change of my plan, but this is not a change of God's plan. This is part of the script. And at this moment, I have to think, what is the mitzvah I can do in this moment? How can I refine myself in this moment? And how can I help others in this moment? That's it. It's that simple. In every moment, we could seek out one of these three things. Maybe there's a mitzvah to do here. Maybe there's a way that I could improve myself, become more empathetic, become more patient, whatever the skill is that we need to learn to grow up, and also to help others. There was I think I mentioned this previously, but there was a journalist that became ill and was in the hospital, and his sons passed by the Rebbe to get a blessing before Yom. I think it was before Yom Kippur. Before Yom Kippur they would go to receive honey cake, and they came before the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "Go tell your father when he finishes the mission why he was sent to the hospital, he will be released." So they told their father, and this is the Jacobson brothers, by the way, Y.Y. Jacobson or Simon Jacobson, their father was a journalist, and he started giving charity money to the people, the doctors, give tzedakah, was helping people put on tefillin and giving Shabbos candles. Within a week, he was home because he changed his mindset. I'm like, oh, this wasn't meant to be. I'm meant to be here to come in contact with this person, with that person. So our mission is exactly where we are. That's our mission. You see how this is so anchoring, and it gives us a certain calmness and inner serenity, because at any moment, this is the new scenario that Hashem placed before me, and that means He believes in me to succeed in it. So the two tools that are important here is, number one is flexible goal adjustment. Something becomes so rigid. We have to be this way. This is what we have to do. And we have to sometimes say, no, we have to be ready to pivot. Maybe Hashem has a new plan, pivoting to new or alternative goals when the original becomes untenable. And two, the important tool of reframing, viewing a stressful situation from a different perspective. These are very important tools. I know my uncle, he had a business of renting iPads to travelers and to gala events. So he had a bunch of iPads, and if you were traveling and wanted an iPad, so you could rent from, like you came to New York and you had an iPad with 5G or whatever it was, or if you were doing a dinner or you're doing a convention, so then you had iPads. And then COVID comes. There's no traveling, there's no conventions, there's no gala dinners. And then he was thinking, oh my goodness, everything I built up with me and my partner all these years, it's all down the drain. And then someone asked him for tzedakah, for a certain cause. He's like, how can I give tzedakah when my life is going down the drain and before my eyes? And then it's like, no, what does Hashem want from me in this moment? I have the ability to help now. Can I help now? He gave the money. And then 2 days later, he starts getting calls from schools. Our students need iPads because they're all home. And how are we going to teach them if we don't have iPads? And so his business exploded, So you just have to be ready to pivot and reframe that everything Hashem has a plan and to put our trust in Him. You have to be flexible. That's right. So meaning isn't everything, but what happens to all those years of our life that we weren't awake? We're not. What happens? We weren't woke to it. So was all those years a waste? What about all those parts of the years? No.
No.
Because Hashem is writing the script, that means that things were happening, purposes were being fulfilled, whether we were aware of it or not. Even when we weren't aware that we were fulfilling our purposes, the purposes was happening anyhow. So all those years that I was so stupid back then. I was doing this, I did that, I didn't know how to be in relationships, I didn't know this or that. That was all, you were fulfilling a purpose, even if you weren't aware of it. But we should be awake to it as much as we can. And one last thing is that our awareness of an event is itself a part of the plan. You ever saw that video that they have? They had this YouTube video. I saw this maybe 15 years ago, where it says follow the. There's three people wearing white clothing and three people wearing black clothing, and they're bouncing around. Each team is bouncing around the basketball. Okay, follow how many passes of the basketball did the people with the white clothing make? And so you're watching and you're counting 1, 2, 3, and you're like totally immersed. Oh, 15 passes. And then it says, if you counted 15 passes, you were right. But did you notice the gorilla walking in the background? Right? And then it replays the video and you see it like, yeah, there was a gorilla. But your attention was so focused on, counting the passes that you didn't notice. And that's the way our brain filters out most of life. Most of life we don't see. We see very little parts of our life because who has time to notice the temperature in the room and the vibrations of the floor and what garment clothing everyone's wearing? We don't have the ability to really pay attention to so much. And the fact that we become aware of something is also part of Hashem's plan. The fact that you became aware of something is a part of your purpose. So you say, you noticed that someone is sad. Why did you notice? Other people are not noticing. Oh, this becomes a part of your divine purpose. This is part of the script. Hashem made you notice. Okay? Now, let's look at a detail of this because it's very profound. Okay, let's look at text 10, page 144. Every single thing that one sees or hears is an instruction for their conduct in the service of Hashem. This is the idea of Avodah, service, to comprehend and discern in all things a way into which to service Hashem. So this is like a very deep upgrade. We just up the level. Not only is everything with a plan, the fact that you're aware of something is also part of the plan. Why did you become aware? So now you see how you're on call at every moment of the day. There's never a time that you're off, because even when you're off, that's part of it. Why am I in a bad mood? And why am I noticing that I'm in a bad mood? Oh, that becomes part of your plan, part of your mission, part of your purpose to notice. So you board a bus and you find yourself seated next to a stranger. It's not random. In other words, if you notice him, then there's something there. Maybe it's to learn how they handle stress. Maybe it's to learn to start a conversation. Whatever, there's no script of how to respond. You and Neshama will know what the correct response is, and you'll level up. So there's no dictation of you got to do it this way unless there's a mitzvah. If there's a mitzvah to be done, then you do the mitzvah. Okay? Now, what happens when we notice someone doing something bad? What is our purpose there? If we notice someone doing something bad,
Is our purpose to point it out?
to call it out, okay? So is that the purpose, to call it out? It depends. Here we're going one level deeper, and I feel bad that we only have 9 minutes left, but we're going one level deeper. It depends what you became aware of. If you became aware of, wow, there's a problem here, how can I fix it? Then you know your mission is to fix it, either by calling it out or bringing awareness. But what if your awareness was also a level of judgment? Oh, look how deplorable that is. Look how awful that is. Then it means that it's something to look within you, that you have that same flaw within yourself that you have to correct. If you notice the solution, then that means you're there to help the other person because that's what you became aware of. You became aware of the problem and the solution. Great. Go be a solution maker. If all you noticed was the judgment, then you also have to look inwards. There's a flaw within you. That's very unnatural, you know. Usually we're so quick to judge and to condemn and to look out, but the fact we became aware. Why did Hashem make me become aware of that wrong in somebody else? Hashem was doing me a favor. Because if Hashem would have pointed out that flaw within me, I would have become all defensive. But if I notice in somebody else, it becomes obvious, oh, of course that's a terrible thing. You know, King David, the prophet comes to King David and tells King David, let me ask you a question, King David. Give me some advice. What should I do? What would you say about this terrible story that happened? He says, what's the story? There was this rich man who had many sheep, and then there was a poor man who took care of his one sheep and lovingly raised the sheep and took care of it. And then the rich man invited guests and decided he wants to feed them sheep. So he took the sheep of his poor neighbor. What would you say, King David? King David said, that's terrible. That's awful. And then what did the prophet say? Anyone remember the story? The prophet said, you are that rich man. You saw Bathsheba, your neighbor's wife. You're the king. You can get any woman you want. You took Uriah Hittite's wife. You know, you sent him off to battle to be killed, and you took her for yourself. You are that man. And right away he realized, and he confessed his sins. And the rest of his life he spent doing teshuvah for that, and many chapters into Ilim. But why did the prophet put the story in that way? Why does the prophet just come to him and say, how dare you marry your, you know? Because it's so hard for us to accept our flaws about ourselves. But when we see it in others, we become, you know, experts. We're the experts of right and wrong. So Hashem sometimes helps us see it in others. But why does he, when he shows it to us in a way of judgment, that means we should take the clue and look inside. If he shows it to us with a solution in mind, then Hashem is just showing us to be helpful. Look at the bad, you go fix it. But if he's showing us the judgment, that means it's a time to look within. We see that amazingly in the story of Noah after the flood. After the flood, Noah comes into a crazy world, right? The world is completely destroyed. It's devastated. There's nothing there. He has to start from scratch. And it says he planted a vineyard. He makes wine. He gets drunk. He gets completely naked and is drunk naked in his tent. His son Ham comes into the tent and then goes to his brother and said, look, dad is naked. And says, let's read the text that it says, text 11 on page 145. Noah began to farm and planted a vineyard. He drank from the wine, became drunk, and lay exposed in his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his two brothers outside. Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it across their shoulders, and walked backward to cover their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. Now, remember how we said Chekhov's gun, like every detail is important? That's especially true when it comes to Torah. When the Torah writes a verse, every single word is intentional and meaningful. So there's like almost an extra detail here. It says their faces were turned away. They did not see their father's nakedness. It's like a little repetitive. Like, of course they didn't see. They were turned away. How are they going to see if they're walking backwards? What's the deeper meaning here? When they were walking backwards, that was the physical act. They didn't see physically. But the second part is they didn't even judge their father. They not only didn't they see his nakedness, right away when they saw the nakedness, what did they see? A solution. How can we fix it? So it wasn't like, oh, look at our dad, look what he's up to today. Not like the older brother. The older brother, Cham, he saw nakedness and he saw judgment. That means he had to learn that he has some nakedness within him that he has to work on. But the other two brothers, all they saw, a problem, a solution. They didn't even see judgment. And so the fact that what you become aware of is also a part of your purpose, that's another level of depth over here. Okay? So what's the personal meaning behind this moment? That's something we have to ask at every time. With awareness comes a call to action, either to help or to do some personal work on our own. Depends what we become aware of. If we become aware of a problem that we could solve, then it's the solution. If our awareness calls us to judge, we become judgy, then we say, okay, it's God's kind way of putting a mirror to ourselves, of saying this is where we could grow. Seeing no wrong is their faces were turned backwards, means physical orientation. This is the Shem and Yafes. They did not see their father's nakedness. That was their attitude. They weren't coming to judge. There was no moral judgment on it. It's just we're ready to help. So we have to stay awake to the divine presence. Looking for divine presence in all things gives us clarity and direction through very trying times. Okay. This video I added to the class, and it was actually, we saw it at the banquet, and it's 18 minutes long. So just a heads up, we basically did the class, and there's going to be an overview video after this video, but I felt this video really talks to living with this belief, what it looks like when someone inhabits this way of seeing the world.
הייתי בקבוצה, והגיע כינוס השלוחים. ואני מגיע בבוקר של יום ראשון ב-770, ואני רואה מולי את התמונה הגדולה מתחילה להיווצר, ואני נעמד בחוץ ומסתכל, ועוד ועוד שלוחים, עוד שלוחים, עוד שלוחים. אני מסתכל ואני אומר, וואו. אני אהיה בתמונה הזאת. אנחנו יוצאים לנס ציונה במסגרת מיזם שהיה אז, 16 שנה אחורה, של שלוחי תירא, כאשר המיקוד שלי, לפחות בתחילת השליחס, היה באמת בעיקר למסור שיעורים. השנים עוברות, השליחס מתבססת, אתה מרגיש מחובר למקום, המשפחה גודלת, עם עוד ילדים, העבודה מתרחבת. זה בערך השנה העשירית של השליחס שלנו, ואני מרגיש שאנחנו על הגל, יש המון עבודה, הקהילה גודלת, הרבי איתנו. יום שישי, אני ממהר, יש לי בשעה 8:30 מסיבת חומש, ילדי כיתה ב' של בית ספר סביונים. אבל כשאנחנו קמים, אני רואה שזלמי קם בבוקר עם פריחה על כל הגוף. יש לנו כבר 7 ילדים, אנחנו לא מתרגשים מקצת חום, ואפילו לא מפריחה קלה על הגוף, אבל ניגשים לטפל בזה, אז אני מוריד את אשתי במרפאה ונוסע במהירות לבית הכנסת, כדי לקבל את הילדים שכבר מחכים לי. אז הרבי מסביר, שמעתי פעם הסבר מאוד יפה שלו, אומר, וכשאני יוצא, אני מסתכל על הטלפון שלי, ואני רואה יותר מ-20 שיחות שלא נענו מאשתי. אני מיד מחייג אליה, ואומרת לי, מנחם, אני בדרך עם טיפול נמרץ לאסף הרופא, בוא מהר. צוות בחדר הלם, צוות לטראומה, להגיע מיד, רופאים מגיעים מכל המקומות, ואנחנו עומדים מאחורי הדלת, אין לנו מושג מה קורה. ואז יוצאת רופאה. היא מסבירה לנו, תקף אותו חיידק טורף, חיידק שהוא אלים מאוד, והוא נמצא כרגע בסכנת חיים. לא ידעו לתת לנו שירותים אם יחיה, אם הוא יוכל לשמוע, לראות, ללכת. אף אחד לא ידע להגיד לנו. אנחנו מבינים אבל שהמצב לא פשוט. מחשבות רצות. זה הילד שלך. אין לך דבר יותר יקר ממנו. ולמה זה קורה? מה הקדוש ברוך הוא רוצה? ואיך נחיה? ואיך נשרוד את זה? האם נוכל בכלל להמשיך את השליחס שלנו? איך השליחס תיראה בהמשך. בבית רפואה יש בית כנסת, ואני נכנס לשם, אני לא רואה אף אחד. אני רק זוכר שאני נכנס, לוקח סידור, ובאופן מפתיע, זה היה התפילה שהרגשתי בה את הקדוש ברוך הוא הכי הרבה אי פעם. נכנסים לניתוח, ואנחנו עומדים מאחורי הדלת, ותפילות, וציפייה גדולה. ואני זוכר את זה כמו עכשיו, הרופא יוצא ואומר לנו, תקשיבו, ניסינו הכל, אין ברירה. לא תהיה ברירה. נהיה חייבים לקטול אותה רגליים. הגיע אלינו יום אחד הפסיכולוגית, והיא באה להציע לנו את השירותים שלה, כדי לשמוע אותנו ולתמוך בנו נפשית ולעזור לנו. אני זוכר שאמרתי לה, אני לא צריך. אז היא התעקשה ואומרת לי, למה זה טוב, אני אעזור לכם. אני זוכר שאמרתי לה, יש לי כוח, אני אצליח לעבור את זה. זאת אומרת, איזה כוח יש לך? אמרתי לה, תקשיבי, אני שליח של הרבי מלובביץ'. ומה זה שליח? שליח הוא לא רק נציג. אני ממש הכוח של הרבי מלובביץ' שנמצא בנס ציונה. אני שם, זה כמו שהוא שם. אני בטוח שכל הדבר הזה קורה מסיבה מסוימת. גם אם אני לא מצליח כרגע להבין מה, אבל בטוח לי שהכל יהיה בסוף לטובה. אנחנו ניקח את המקרה הזה, גם אם לא ידעתי אז איך, ואנחנו נצמח ממנו. זה יהפוך להיות הדגל שלנו. בנר ראשון של חנוכה, הגענו איתו הביתה. זה כבר היה כמעט חודשיים שלא היינו בבית. ואני זוכר שהדלקנו נרות חנוכה ואמרנו תודה רבה לקדוש ברוך הוא. ממש הרגשנו שקרה לנו נס. אולי אחרים לא יכלו להבין את זה, מה נס? מה נס? אבל אנחנו שידענו שהילד הזה יכל לא להיות איתנו, בחרנו להסתכל באותם רגעים על מה שיש ולא על מה שאין. יש ידיים, יש עיניים, מכל ה-613 איברים של האדם, למה לבחור להסתכל רק על מה שאין? יש כל כך הרבה. זלמי הוא לא רק ילד שלא נחלש מהדבר הזה, אלא העוצמות שלו והכוח שלו זה משהו לא רגיל. ילד שהפך להיות השראה לאחרים. אף אחד לא יכול להתבכיין כשהוא רואה את זלמי. אף אחד לא יכול להתלונן כשהוא רואה את זלמי. אף אחד לא יכול להגיד, אני לא יכול. מה אתה לא יכול? אתה יכול הכל. לא רק שהשליחות לא נחלשה, אלא שהשליחס קיבלה עוצמה אדירה. כי אם עד הסיפור של זלמי, הייתי יכול להגיד, אני לא יכול, אני לא מסוגל, או זה גדול עליי, או אני לא אצליח לעשות את זה. מאז הסיפור של זלמי כבר שום דבר לא מהווה מכשול. העולם כבר לא רלוונטי. רק תחליט, תציב לך יעד, ובטוח שתשיג אותו. אני מאמין שזלמי יהיה שליח. מבחינתי הוא כבר עכשיו שליח. באיזה מסגרת הוא יהיה שליח, אני לא יודע. אני בעיני רוחי רואה אותו, כמו שאני ראיתי את עצמי, בתוך התמונה של הענקית הזאת, של כל השלוחים. כחלק מהצבא הגדול של הרבה, אני בטח רואה את זלמי עומד שמה, או אולי יושב, בתמונה הזאת חלק מהצבא של הרבה. כי זלמי הוא ילד של הרבה.
Welcome to the stage, Zalmi Feldman.
לא באמת זוכרת היום שבו איבדתי את הרגליים שלי. הייתי תינוק, אבל אני כן זוכר את הרגע שבו הבנתי שזה לא הסוף של שום דבר, זו פשוט התחלה של משהו אחר. בבית שלנו אף אחד לא מדבר על מה חסר, זה לא מעניין, מדברים על מה יש ועל מה שאפשר לעשות עם זה. אבא שלי תמיד אומר לי, זלמי, אתה חייל של הרבה, חייל בציוויס השם, וחייל לא מחכה שיתנו לו כוח, הוא פשוט הולך. אז אני הולך, לפעמים זה קשה, לפעמים אני נופל, לפעמים זה כואב, אבל אני יודע שאני שליח של הרבה, וזה מה שנותן לי את הכוח לקום ושוב ללכת. וכל צעד שאני עושה, גם אם זה על פרוטזות, זה צעד עם הרבה. אנשים לפעמים מסתכלים עליי ואומרים לי, זלמי, איזה חזק אתה. האמת, יש בזה משהו, אבל זה רק בגלל שאני משתדל פשוט לעשות מה שצריך. ללכת עם שמחה, ללכת עם אמונה, ללכת כמו ששליח של הרבה צריך ללכת. תודה אבא, תודה שאתה ואמא מגדלים אותנו בבית של נתינה, בבית של חסד, של אחריות, בית של שליחס. אבא, אתה לא רק מספר לנו על הרבה, אתה מראה לנו איך חיים עם הרבה, איך נותנים, איך עוזרים, איך מאמינים, ובעיקר, איך תמיד תמיד הולכים קדימה. בזכותך, אבא, אני אף פעם לא מרגיש שמשהו חסר. להפך, אני מרגיש שאני חלק ממשהו גדול, ושיש לי תפקיד שרק אני יכול לעשות. ותודה, אבא, שלימדת אותי איך תמיד להמשיך ללכת, גם כשזה לא קל. וביחד נזכה כולנו ללכת יחד לקבל את פני משיח צדקנו. לפני שאני יורד מהבמה, אני רוצה לדבר על מישהו מאוד מיוחד. מישהו שהשפיע כבר על הרבה אנשים. ואפילו שהוא בכלל לא מכיר אותי, יש בינינו הרבה מה משותף. אני מדבר על הרב לירז זיירה. שפועל עם סטודנטים בקמפוס בירושלים, ובדרכו המיוחדת זוכה לקרב אותם לרבה. בחודש תשרי האחרון, בזמן שלירז לבש את המדים האחרים שלו, מדי צה"ל, הוא דרך בטעות על רימון יד שהתפוצץ, ואיבד את שתי רגליו. אבל מהרגע הראשון הוא לא עצר. כמה שעות אחרי בבית הרפואה הוא קם ואמר, אני רוצה לקום ולרקוד. אנשים שבאים לבקר אותו ולנחם אותו יצאו מחוזקים ומעודדים, והוא זוכה להראות לכולם וגם לי מה זה כוח רצון של חסיד אמיתי. הרב לירז, בשם כל השלוחים ובשם כל עם ישראל, אני מאחל לך רפואה שלמה ומחזק אותך שתמשיך בעבודתך הקדושה להפיץ אור, אמונה ושמחה בכל מקום ובכל יהודי שאתה פוגש.
זלמי, אתה חייל אמיתי בצבאות השם. ושליח נאמן של הרב בכל מובן המילה. אתה נותן כוח לכל אחד מאיתנו. הוא מזכיר לנו מה זה אמונה אמיתית, להמשיך גם כשקשה, בשמחה ובגאווה של שליח.
תודה רבה, הרב לירז. האם תוכל לשתף כמה מילים עם השלוחים ועם כל עם ישראל?
Dear Shluchim and honored guests, this is Liraz Zeira speaking to you from the Holy Land, Eretz Israel, the land upon which the eyes of Hashem are always upon it. I'm speaking from the very hospital where 10 years ago, little Zalmi fought for his life. Let me take you back a month and a half ago. On the 7th of Tishrei, Monday morning, 10 a.m., I'm on a reserve duty mission in Syria. Suddenly, without a warning, a grenade explodes beside me and I'm thrown into the air. Lying on the ground, fighting for my life, I begin crawling towards the nearest post, knowing every second mattered. Soldiers reached to me, saved my life, applied tourniquets, and called for evacuation. I heard the commander say on the radio, "We have one wounded, it's a rabbi, both legs amputated." At that moment, I understood two things. One, I must stay conscious to survive. And if I am alive, it's because I still have a mission in this world. During the evacuation, I whispered to Hillel, especially the Rebbe's capital. A soldier shouted, "Shema Yisrael!" And I told him, "Stop! I'm not going anywhere. I have a shlichus." A helicopter evacuated me. And I woke up 24 hours later in intensive care, my wife at my side. We immediately felt that everything we learned, our shlichus, the Rebbe's sense of purpose, had prepared us for this moment. I lost my legs, but I was giving my life back with a renewed sense of purpose. People always said I'm constantly running. From now on, I plan to fly. I'm honored. I'm honored to join the group the Rebbe called not disabled soldiers, but exemplary soldiers. And that is truly how I feel. My mission is only beginning. I will use every moment to bring hope, faith, and joy to Jews everywhere and to remind them that Hashem is always with us. To all our fellow shluchim, and to all of Am Yisrael, thank you. Your prayers and love reminded me, as Daniel Peretz's father, Hashem Yikom Damo, said, we may be the smallest nation, but we are the biggest family. So Zalmi, let's join with all the Rebbe's soldiers around the world and sing a niggun that breaks down the walls of Golus, because very soon we will dance together with the coming of Mashiach now.
Very moving. Wow. That was incredible. Incredible.
Okay, so we could We could get through.
Oh,
We
yeah.
could get through.
Oh, yeah.
It's not always easy,
You
but
can't
Hashem gives
complain.
us.
How can you complain about anything?
But if we feel a need to complain, that's also part of our purpose. Whatever we're feeling, we could accept our feelings because Hashem created us with that baggage too.
It's interesting that you said it's okay to say to Hashem, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, that's in the good tradition of Moses and Abraham. We're following. We have good history to do that.
Why me?
Why me? And then we change the question. Instead of why me, we change the question to, and what am I needed for? What am I going to do here in this moment? So instead of focusing on why did this happen, it's why am I needed here? Instead of lama, it's lama. Instead of why, it's for what purpose at every moment.
Lesson.
Okay, we'll skip the lesson summary, but I'll include a link in the lesson. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And I hope you'll join us for the final lesson next Wednesday, the grand finale. And thank you all for joining us. Really,
Thank
really.
you.
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Rabbi.
Bye. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. It was wonderful.
Yeah.